This video is for informational and entertainment purposes. Viewer discretion is advised.
Kenya versus Zimbabwe. Capital city: Kenya, Nairobi. Zimbabwe, Harare. National animal: Kenya, lion. Zimbabwe, sable antelope. Most followed religion: Christianity is the most followed religion in both countries. Population: Kenya, 57.532 million. Zimbabwe, 16.95 million. Landmass: Kenya, 582,646 square kilometers. Zimbabwe, 399,757 square kilometers. Human Development Index: Kenya, 0.628. Zimbabwe, 0.598. Gini coefficient: Kenya, 38.7. Zimbabwe, 50. Life expectancy: Kenya, 64.01 years. Zimbabwe, 63.35 years. Literacy rate: Kenya, 83%. Zimbabwe, 89.7%. Peace index: Kenya, 2.39. Zimbabwe, 2.22. Happiness index: Kenya, 4.5. Zimbabwe, 3.3. Kenya, 51. Zimbabwe, 26. Most spoken language: Kenya, Swahili. Zimbabwe, Shona. Official language: English is the official language for both countries. Internet penetration: Kenya, 48%. Zimbabwe, 38.4%. 5G availability: both countries have access to 5G, primarily in major cities and urban areas. Access to electricity: Kenya, 76.2%. Zimbabwe, 50.1%. GDP nominal: Kenya, $136.014 billion. Zimbabwe, $53.310 billion. GDP per capita nominal: Kenya, $2,549. Zimbabwe, $3,071. GDP PPP: Kenya, $403.146 billion. Zimbabwe, $136.151 billion. Foreign exchange: Kenya, $7.342 billion. Zimbabwe, $115.540 million. External debt: Kenya, $30.514 billion. Zimbabwe, $11 billion. Defense budget: Kenya, $1.307 billion. Zimbabwe, $0.53 billion. Military ranking: Kenya, 83rd. Zimbabwe, 111th. Total military personnel: Kenya, 75,000. Zimbabwe, 50,800. Active personnel: Kenya, 50,000. Zimbabwe, 29,000. Tanks: Kenya, 188. Zimbabwe, 15. Air Force strength: Kenya, 156. Zimbabwe, 95. Helicopters: Kenya, 85. Zimbabwe, 28. Navy vessels: Kenya, 23. Zimbabwe, 0. Main export: Kenya, tea. Zimbabwe, gold. Main import: Kenya, machinery. Zimbabwe, fuel. Labor force: Kenya, 25.5 million. Zimbabwe, 6.5 million. Merchant marine fleet: Kenya, 26. Zimbabwe, 0. Ports: Kenya, 4. Zimbabwe, 0. Airports: Kenya, 370. Zimbabwe, 144. Roadway: Kenya, 161,000 kilometers. Zimbabwe, 97,000 kilometers. Railway coverage: Kenya, 3,819 kilometers. Zimbabwe, 3,427 kilometers. Waterways. Kenya, 0 kilometers. Zimbabwe, 0 kilometers. Kenya's capital is Nairobi, and Zimbabwe's is Harare. Both countries are mostly Christian, and both use English officially. Kenya's most spoken language is Swahili, while Zimbabwe's is Shona. Right away, Kenya is the bigger country, both in land size and population. In development, Kenya scores slightly higher, has lower inequality, and a slightly better life expectancy. Zimbabwe, however, has a higher literacy rate. Kenya is usually happier, but Zimbabwe ranks slightly better in peace. When it comes to technology and services, Kenya is ahead. It has better internet access, better electricity coverage, and more developed digital infrastructure. Both countries have 5G, mostly in big cities. Economically, Kenya has a much larger economy, but Zimbabwe has a higher income per person. Kenya holds far more foreign reserves, but also carries more debt. In military strength, Kenya is far stronger. It spends more, has more personnel, more equipment, and it even has a navy, which Zimbabwe does not. Kenya also leads in infrastructure. More ports, more airports, more roads, and a slightly bigger railway network. Zimbabwe's advantage is its extensive waterways, while Kenya has none. In summary, Kenya leads in size, development, technology, economy, infrastructure, and military power. Zimbabwe shines in literacy and income per person.